Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Holy moly! If you love turn-based games, Valve absolutely snapped off this week. For those who are not already aware, Steam is running a turn-based fest all week, or basically leading up through October 7th, where they are going to heavily discount some of your favorite turn-based games. If there's a turn-based game that you've been waiting to buy, this week is probably the time for you to go ahead and pony up. In this video, I'm going to walk through a bunch of turn-based games that we've covered here on the channel. I've loved them all, so I know if you haven't played them yet, you'll have an absolutely fantastic time. I'll also cover some games that I haven't actually played yet, but so many people in my community have recommended them that I feel confident in telling you these games are worth checking out. With that being said, if you're new to the channel, I play a ton of turn-based games and do a lot of content on them. So if that interests you, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell so that you get all of my content. Before we get into the games, also let me note right up front, Baldur's Gate 3 and Persona 3 Remastered are not part of the sale. They are both still full price. I know a lot of you in the community would have been asking about them. If you want those, you're going to have to pony up. Otherwise, let's go ahead and get into the discounted games. You all already know on this channel, we love Owlcat games. And so we'll go ahead and start with the games that they have on sale. And up first is Pathfinder Kingmaker, their very first game. A fantastic, epic tale. You take over an area called the Stolen Lands, and it basically allows you to play as a king, figuring out how not only to build up your empire, but protect it from the political enemies and creatures that neighbor the nearby lands. There's over 100 classes in this game, and frankly even more when you add on mods. It also has one of the best romances I've ever played in a game before, completely changing the ending that you can receive. Unfortunately, there are a couple of things that mar the experience. Kingdom management is a constant time crunch, so you never feel comfortable, and there's also a lot of bugs in the game that cause kingdom management to be even more cumbersome. So for some people, they have difficulty getting through this game, but if you can push through the bugs, it's absolutely an amazing experience. Currently, it's 80% off for a paltry $4. Definitely worth it. Next up is Owlcat's very next game, Wrath of the Righteous, which puts you in the role of a crusader fighting against a demonic invasion. You're able to choose from a variety of mythic paths, including one that will make you an angel or a lich or a demon or even a swarm that walks, which is literally made of bugs and devours everything in its path. There's a lot of great options, and all of them have different mechanics and change the story significantly. The base story is fantastic. It's large, it's epic, it's got multiple endings along with a secret ending that is extremely satisfying to get. There are over 200 classes in the game with a lot of different mechanics, and combat is absolutely fantastic. Not only can you play this in turn-based, but you can actually flip over to real-time as well, and you can do the same thing in Kingmaker. Wrath of the Righteous has equally quality paths whether you are playing as a good aligned or an evil aligned character, which is very rare for RPGs. Finally, it's got some real difficulty to it. Of course, you can reduce that down to easy if you want a smoother time, but if you're looking for a really punishing experience, Wrath of the Righteous can provide that as well. It's currently 70% off, which brings it down to $12. Last on the list for Owlcat games, we have Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. This game allows you to play as a human who's a rogue trader, which means you have special privileges in Warhammer's grimdark universe, where there are a lot of rules about what humans can and cannot do. That environment makes this game very unique compared to just about any other RPG you have played before, and I quickly fell in love with this setting. Beyond that, great story, great mechanics, fantastic classes, really interesting characters for you to talk to. There's a ton to like about Rogue Trader. It just had some DLC drop that added another companion along with new weapons and a bunch of patches have recently changed the entire combat experience, so it's really a fantastic time to jump into this game. Currently, it's got a 40% discount, bringing its price tag down to $30. Let's now move on to a different developer, WotR Games. I absolutely loved their King Arthur Knight's Tale title. You play as Sir Mordred, who, in the tale of King Arthur, is the person who ultimately slew him. And of course, that made him the villain. In this game, you have the opportunity to play him as a hero, someone who's expected to fight against the undead invasion and bring peace to the land. Maybe. It's absolutely a fantastic time, especially if you are familiar with King Arthur lore, as it pulls from a lot of those characters, but gives them all an interesting twist so that they're a little bit different in the game. Even if you don't know the lore, it's obvious that this is a very, very unique world that WotR has created, and that alone makes it interesting to experience. You can recruit over 20 heroes during the course of your adventure, so you get to experience a lot of different personalities and mechanics, and King Arthur has a roguelike setup, so it's not expected that you're going to be able to keep all of these heroes. Over time, they will die or have to be replaced, and so you're constantly being kept on your toes, and the game really rewards you for not just finishing combat, but finishing it well. Knight's Tale is currently 70% off, bringing its price tag down to $14. WotR did a standalone expansion in the same world called Legion 9. In this tale, it's basically a sequel to that game, but you lead a Roman undead legion. And instead of a roguelike where you recruit 30 plus party members, instead you have just a party of 6, and you have to learn how to build them up and use their mechanics and make all of these characters work together. It still retains the same fantastic combat that I really fell in love with for Knight's Tale, and it added enough new wrinkles where it felt like a completely different experience. Legion 9 is currently 40% off at $12. Alright, now let's move on to one more developer, Iron Tower Studios. I've only played one of their games, but it definitely left a strong impression. Colony Ship puts you in the role of being someone who's stranded on a ship that's headed to a far destination that you will not reach in your lifetime. Consequently, everyone has kind of lost hope in the original mission of the ship, and instead they've separated into factions and they're fighting over territory. In my opinion, Colony Ship has the best pacifist run in gaming. It really requires you to go all in on conversations, but at the same time, you are going to be put into situations where in order to be a pacifist, you're going to have to do things that would absolutely disgust you, like leaving innocent people to die or engaging in real scumbag behavior. It doesn't really allow you to play pacifist as a person who's just always does the right thing. Really cool. Put me in situations where I had to think through what it is that I wanted to do. I absolutely loved going through Colony Ship. If you decide to take more of a combat route, it's a very punishing path. Combat is extremely difficult, but there are a lot of great mechanics and interesting sci-fi tools that the game makes available so you can play how you want to play. I've heard that Iron Tower Studios is in a little bit of financial straits, so I'm really hoping a lot of people picked up Colony Ship and that we're able to get a sequel to this amazing game. Currently, it's 40% off, bringing the price tag down to $24. Since we're on the subject of Iron Tower Studios, let me switch over to another game of theirs that I haven't played yet, but I have heard quite a bit about. Age of Decadence. Supposedly, this game is amazing. It's in a post-apocalyptic world based on the fallen Roman Empire. There are lots of different ways to create your character. My understanding is this game also has an amazing pacifist run available to it with fantastic writing, but similar to Colony Ship, it's also very tough to play, especially if you're going to be a combat-heavy character. If all of that sounds interesting to you, the game is 60% off, which brings its price tag down to $6. All right, moving back into games that I have played, Skald against the Black Priory. I played this earlier this year. It's absolutely amazing. Dark, gritty, unsettling story and environment. It just constantly feels like you're running into people who are in desperate, beleaguered situations. I really loved playing through this game. It's got very punishing combat and an old school art style that really appeals to me. The characters you meet are fascinating, and there's some really stellar writing when you get into all of the various side quests and the overall arc that you're expected to walk through. Currently, it has a 25% discount, bringing its price tag down to $12. Next on the list is Broken Roads. This game released earlier this year and puts you in the role of someone who comes to a town that is completely waylaid by bandits. Together, you and several other adventurers have to pick up the pieces and figure out how to fight back and unravel the story of why these characters are assaulting your town. There's a moral compass system in the game, which is really promising if it ends up being fleshed out more, because it does a fascinating job of tracking what kind of person you are, whether you be a humanist or Machiavellian or something else of that sort. So it has more layers than just Paragon or Renegade or good and evil like a lot of other RPGs you can play. It had an absolutely brutal launch because the game did have quite a few bugs, and just in general, critics and players accused it of being bland and not really all that much fun to play. The developer has been doing a ton of patches and updates, and from what I've heard, it's a very different game now than it was upon launch. Unfortunately, I'm probably not going to have time to get into it this year, but definitely in 2025, after a few more patches, I plan to circle back around and give Broken Roads another try. So if you end up giving it another try this year, definitely reach out and let me know, what do you think, and is it a much better game in its current state? Currently, it is 30% off with a $25 price tag. Next on the list is Solasta, Crown of the Magister. In my opinion, this game is the purest representation of tabletop that I've seen in a video game yet. It has one of the best character creation systems I've ever seen as well, laying things out in a very clean and clear way where even people who are not used to D&D type games can easily jump in and create exactly the type of character that they want. The gameplay and combat in Solasta is fantastic. And again, it feels like you're sitting around a table with a bunch of friends, rolling dice, trying to get through an adventure. Unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of the story or the writing in this game, and as you can see, it doesn't really look the best. I will say though, from a story standpoint, it had 3 DLC packs, and each DLC felt like it was written a little bit better than the last, so I'm really looking forward to Tactical Adventure's next game to see what kind of leaps they can take. Currently, Solasta Crown of the Magister has a 70% discount, bringing its price tag down to $9. Next up is Wasteland 3. Guns. If you are tired of the bows and arrows and the magic and the swords, Wasteland 3 is absolutely for you. It's all about submachine guns, assault rifles, rocket launchers. There's a few melee weapons thrown in, but why would you use that? I love just putting a sniper rifle on my shoulder and absolutely laying into some enemies. Wasteland 3 lets you do that. It's also got a fantastic sense of humor, and it's constantly a joy to walk around in its world and meet new people. The combat is great and punishing. You never get tired of being involved in it. The story absolutely keeps you moving along. This is a game I absolutely plan to live stream sometime next year. Currently, it's got an 80% discount, bringing the price tag to $8. Next up is Expeditions Rome. This puts you in the role of someone who's part of a Greek army. And actually, you're under the tutelage of Caesar. And you're going to meet other historical figures as you go through the game, such as Cleopatra. That makes the world very interesting because even though Obviously, they take some liberties. There is some effort made at making the game historically accurate, and so it's a fascinating experience being a part of this Greek army that's basically marching into these different areas and trying to take them over. Speaking of that military campaign, the mechanics that you use in order to build it up are interesting to play with, and the class mechanics are fantastic as well. Turn-based combat is a lot of fun, but keep in mind that it's also very slow because Expeditions Rome has massive battles that'll have a lot of different people moving, and each one has to move separately. So it doesn't benefit from some of the advancements a game like Baldur's Gate 3 is used so that you can speed up the turn-based encounters. Currently, this game has a 60% discount, which brings it to $18. Next on the list, we have Midnight Suns, which is based in the Marvel Universe. Automatically, that makes it fantastic because you're running around with characters like Iron Man, Captain America, and Spider-Man. I'm a big Marvel fan, so that automatically is a win in my book for this game. You play as a brand new custom hero that the Avengers ask for help to assist them in beating back a demonic army. This allows you to give your character their own unique powers and mechanics, and at the same time you can build up other Marvel heroes with mechanics which are much more familiar to the powers they would usually use. Combat looks incredible. It uses a card system that when you just watch it probably doesn't look all that good, but I promise you when the game is actually in your control, the combat is fantastic. It's a ton of fun going through those cards, seeing all of the cinematics and art in motion. It never gets old watching Iron Man fly high up into the air and lay down missile fire on everybody around him. Unfortunately, the story and the writing are absolutely atrocious, which made it difficult to completely enjoy the experience with this game, but still, I would say the combat alone is worth it, especially with a 75% discount, which brings the price tag down to $15. Definitely worth checking out. Next up, Ruined King. I definitely did not expect to enjoy this game. It's based on the League of Legends MOBA, which I have never played and I have no interest in playing, and so I automatically assumed that this would be a cash grab. It's not. It's one of the best RPGs I've played for sure. The art is absolutely amazing. The colors constantly pop off the screen, but even more importantly, this is a game that takes its time with developing its characters. All of your party members get their own time to shine. All of them are allowed opportunities to grow and evolve. It's really, really nice, fantastic writing, really interesting story. I enjoyed going through this game. The combat has an interesting lane mechanic where you can switch party members into different fast or slow lanes that determine how their abilities are going to function and how you're able to defend from what the enemies are going to be able to do. It's really, really interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience of playing through Ruined King. Currently, it has a 50% discount, which brings it down to $15. I've still got more games that I want to walk you through, but I don't want this video to be super long. So we're not going to show footage for each one of them, and I'm not going to do a whole rundown. I'm going to just say the title, give you a sentence, maybe two about it, and then tell you the discount. Hopefully you'll hear something that intrigues you. Getting into the list, starting with Encased. It's sci-fi, turn-based. It's a fantastic time. Unfortunately, it wears out its welcome close to the end, so I don't think it's quite as great as the other ones that I've listed, but it's still worth trying out. 90% off at $3. Shadowrun Dragonfall is sci-fi, steampunk, and corporate espionage all together. Absolutely a great 20-hour time. It's 75% off at $4. Unfortunately, its sequel, Hong Kong, is not part of this sale, so you would have to buy that at full price. Jagged Alliance 3, guns, guns, guns again. Great time putting together teams of mercenaries to just run into a place and have a ball. It's 50% off at $23. Hard West 2, dark, grimy, really interesting setting, really interesting art, Had a great time with that game, 70% off at $9. There are a couple of games that are a part of the sale that I know are fantastic, but I played them before I had a channel, so I don't have any content for them, but I'm just going to throw them out there and let you know if you haven't played them, I definitely recommend that you do. The Banner Saga, one of my all-time favorite series. It's absolutely depressing, and it's about a desperate group of people, but the story is amazing. 80% off of each game. There are 3 of them. They're $5 a piece. $15 is no question a steal for this amazing series. Final Fantasy VIII Remastered. Final Fantasy VIII is personally my favorite Final Fantasy game. I never played 7. Incredible story, everything you loved about Final Fantasy, and the best mini game that Final Fantasy has ever had. 60% off at $8. Speaking of Final Fantasy, they also have 13. Unlike a lot of other people, I loved it. I thought Lightning was amazing, and I thought from a cinematic standpoint, when it comes to the combat, Final Fantasy 13 is the best I've seen in the series. 60% off, $7. All right, now we finally got to the last group of games. These are the games that I haven't played myself, but there's been a large swarm of people on the channel who have said these games are amazing, so I feel confident recommending them and telling you about the discounts available. First up, I already talked about Expeditions Rome. Before Rome, there was Expeditions Vikings. Everything you love about the Roman version, except it applies to Viking culture. 75% off for $8. Warhammer 40k Mechanicus. It has what many people would call the best soundtrack you can possibly hear in a Warhammer game. Keep in mind, it's extremely punishing and difficult to play, but there is supposed to be a sequel to the game coming out next year, so this is probably a great time to jump in and be ready for that game to come out. 70% off for $9. Torment, Tides of Numenera, which is the sequel to Planescape Torment, which many people have told me is the best written RPG ever created. Tides of Numenera is not considered to be in that same class, but it is well regarded from what I've heard as a very well written experience, and a lot of people thoroughly enjoyed it. 75% off for $9. Atom RPG. This is from an indie developer, and he created a game that's in the same vein as the first 2 Fallout games. So it's in a post-apocalyptic world with very mature setting and interesting combat mechanics. 70% off for $5. Persona 4 Golden is the updated version of Persona 4. Supposedly, Persona 3 through 5 are absolutely amazing and games that I absolutely need to play for their story, for their dialogue, for their NPCs, and for very interesting combat mechanics. I did a brief live stream of Metaphor and thoroughly enjoyed it, so I'm looking forward to diving into this at some point. 40% off for $12. Tactics Ogre Reborn is a strategy RPG that supposedly has a very deep storyline, really based around choice, and gives you some interesting characters to use. I have had so many people telling me about Tactics Ogre, so I absolutely at some point plan to get around to it. 50% off for $25. In that same vein, people keep mentioning Octopath Traveler and Octopath Traveler 2, saying that the combat, the story, the characters, the writing are just all absolutely outstanding, and that these are must-play JRPGs. Octopath Traveler is 50% off for $30. Octopath Traveler 2 is 40% off for $36. I would definitely recommend picking up both of them. And then finally, the games that kind of started it all, XCOM and XCOM 2. These are also games that I keep hearing from people that I must play. More so XCOM 2. I've heard that XCOM is kind of to the point where it's so old it's really difficult to enjoy, whereas XCOM 2 you can still kind of jump in and have a good time. Regardless, these are both turn-based strategy games with absolutely punishing combat. Your team members are expected to die over time, and you'll have to replace them with new people. XCOM is 90% off for $3, while XCOM 2 is 95% off, also for $3. And that finally brings us to the end of this list. By no means, though, is this the full list of all the discounted games on Steam. Those are just the ones that I saw that jumped out at me, that I knew either I had played or that I planned to play and knew that people would enjoy. Let me know down in the comments if you end up picking up any of these games, or if maybe there's some games on the list that I didn't mention that you feel like people would absolutely want to know about. Regardless, I think this sale is bananas, and it's really, really cool that people have this opportunity to pick up some of these fantastic titles. Hope all of you enjoyed this video. Take care. Of course, I don't want to leave without giving a shout out to my members. Tule, I saw you signed up yesterday. Appreciate it, man. Thank you for the support. Jess, thank you so much for being a member. Kiwi, you've been around for a minute. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate the support. Mr. Goblin, thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate you signing up as a member. I appreciate all of you. Jay Wills, what's going on, man? Not only did you sign up as a member, but I've seen you on the streams. Glad you all have been enjoying the content. Hope you all enjoy what we have coming up. Take care.